Welcome to TALKWALK. This is Minoli de Almeida, continuing the talk show on the psychosocial impact of post-COVID, which has plunged us all into some sort of depression, our emotions taking over with anxieties and confusion. This series is intended for us to help us overcome these issues and face the new normal. This episode, we focus on urban design for a better quality of life and the economy. Sri Lanka is a tropical paradise with lush green rice fields, the hills adorned with beautiful tea plantations, the sandy beaches palm-fringed with the ocean surrounding us. Even the exotic blue whale has thought it proper to fall in love with this exotic island and made the ocean his abode. But unfortunately and very sadly, there is so much of destruction. We got to arrest it right now, so we'll talk with the experts and find out their views how we are going to stop this destruction. As panelists, we have the famous Murad Ismail. Hi, Murad. We have Ashok Ferry, the well-known author. We have Deepali Modi, a chartered architect, and Dr. Jagat Munasinghe, a town planner. Reverting back to Murad, who he intended first to become a marine biologist, but due to unforeseen circumstances in his home country, changed his career to that of an architect by default, he says. He has worked with the great Jeffrey Bawa and now is with that famous Channa Daswate. Together they founded ATS Consultants with worldwide recognition. Some of his works you will see on screen are the Four Seasons Maldives, the Centara Bentota, Jetwing Yala, Brandix India Apparel City, Vizag, Water's Edge Recreational Center and Club, and the golf course in Trincomalee. Doubletree by Hilton is ready to be opened in Veeravilla. Our city hospital in Kandy. To quote his words, he says, "Architecture is only an art. To me, it is more scientific. It is understanding life and its psychology." Murad Ismail, unquote. I would add that talent is inherent, that money cannot buy. Yes, Murad, it's all yours. Go on.
Thank you, Minoli. On the topic, one of the things I'd like to get off the shoes of a professional, because all is not lost. And one of the ways to look at it is if you fly over Colombo or go up a large building and look down, it's still very, very green. So all is not lost. And in any developing or developed nation, there is always a cluster which becomes the commercial hub. And it's a good thing that it clusters, because that's where the highest amount of people work, and it's sort of a metropolis, and it's inevitable. And somehow, due to our rules and laws, we have saved our beaches with reservations and so on and so forth. We have zoned it, I don't agree totally, but we have zoned it so that, development always would occur near a port and an airport, and Colombo City is the commercial capital, and it's going to be built up. So all is not lost. But we've been ignoring a proper planning, and it obviously developed on its own in terms of, it was too expensive for people to live in Colombo, so, like a ring development or a linear development, it goes towards Bataramula and so on and so forth. And yes, we don't have the transportation hubs properly done yet, and we are a third world country, but I think all is not lost. Now, The problem I see is that we use an individual or a group of a profession to actually design or make rules for a city. It's not possible. It's not a town planner's job, it's not an architect's job, it's a lot of professionals, from psychologists to scientists to people who are professional in traffic planning, to many things, including projection of where the country would be in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, and we have ignored that. We've always used a town planner, a architect, a something, and they have their whole idea put and politically motivated due to the powers of that time, agreed, and it's done. I'll tell you a simple example. We have zones in Colombo which says you can't build over 3 floors. Now this is Colombo commercial, where we have now identified as the metropolis, which will increase towards Port City, maybe increase towards Colonnava, maybe. And then you have some person sitting there with 400, 600 million rupees worth of land, not even being able to build something for their children, and they have to sort of sell it off, because even if they build, they would build 3 for their kids and then sell 2 and cover up, and they're happy. But instead they have to sell it and leave, right? And they leave to Batramulla. So everybody starts shifting to Batramulla, Jayala, Panadura. This is the town planning we've done so far. And then nobody realizes they have to come back to work to Colombo, and we don't have the traffic matter sorted. So it's always like point, we will do this, this is residential, so we do this, but not an overall plan. So those are the minus points, but as a plus point, we are still not spoiled it. It's absolutely, I mean, we have the commercial capital in Colombo, we have the governing capital in Sri Jayawardhanapura, and we could still save it to be a wonderful cityscape. Now, the other thing is that why I want to come out of a professional shoot out is, if you take Anuradhapura period or the British period, Colombo Fort was where the governors or the governing part of the society worked, and they came to work to the fort, but they lived in Mutwal, Peta, and so on and so forth. So every morning and evening, to work and from work, they would cross the areas of today the main street, Keza Street, so on and so forth. And automatically it became a little retail commodity hub, because it's easy for people to buy something on the way home or on the way to work. And that's a natural phenomenon of how a city, I mean, I think it was Bill Hillier who actually streamlined this, where you will have the best possible place, because you don't need to go to a shop to buy your vegetables, right? So you cross it, and you became a commercial hub, and so later on called Main Street, because that was the commercial hub. Now, and the residents were obviously in Peta, Mutwal, and so on. It's still very residential there. Now, the modern town planners, and also if you take example, the Ratnapura town, and towns are formed where many roads from many parts of the from the east, the west, the north, the south meet, and it starts developing into a town because people do cross that. Now, the town plan, I wouldn't say town planner, sorry, but the professionals at the point decided that because Ratnapura floods due to the river coming down roughly 6,000 feet and taking a bend in 20 kilometers and taking a bend near Ratnapura, and it overflows when it rains. Because it floods, they decided to do a new town. And the new town is just off one road, Colombo Ratnapura road, It's off the road in a U, and they started developing the town there. But obviously it's dead today, because nobody diverts to go for commodities. They would divert to go for a specific thing, like a bank, a hospital, and so on. And only the banks, I think, are remaining there. So the idea is that we must realize that we have not yet messed up our country. I may be against, or I may be saying something that against people who think we have. We haven't. Our rules, our authorities have somehow restricted a total mess. And now, for it to be really looked into, people really need to get together and plan out 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Of course, we wouldn't know what our transport system in 30 years is, but whatever we can predict, and then we will have a wonderful city. And if you really look at it, if you come towards the fort area, yes, you will see high rises. You will see some people are against high rises. I'm really not, because we save land, and if it's required, not just put up. If you do that as a landscraper, you probably destroy half the land. So that's probably why our city is still very, very green. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Excellent. So we have got some hope that we are not totally in destruction. Ashok, what have you to add to this?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm absolutely not an expert here. I'm a rank amateur, and I feel kind of nervous amongst all these experts. But I do have one qualification. I live in a city. I've lived in Colombo for the past over 30 years, and I've lived in 7 fairly major cities around the world in a very sort of longish career. So I think that's the most important thing. You have to live in that city to understand its problems and to know where you need to go. I completely agree with Murad. Colombo has one of the finest sets of natural, we have waterways, we have a lot of greenery, and we haven't succeeded yet in destroying all our heritage architecture. We're getting there, but we still haven't. So we've still got a lot when I compare it to other cities in the world where they've demolished everything and had to put up reproduction heritage buildings. We don't. We have the originals. We just need to be aware that they're there. We need to build on them. But there's one thing I want to say here where I think it's a little unfortunate that much of Colombo was laid out in the early 20th century under the Brits. It's an Edwardian city. And in those days, you had this idea of a garden city, very wide, huge plots, zoning, so you had to get into your horse and carriage or your early motor car and go 5-10 minutes to buy your bread, buy your milk, go and get your newspaper. I personally believe that a really successful city is one where you can walk everywhere and you can get your stuff, as Murad said, on your way back from work. You can stop and get your bread, your fish, your milk, whatever you want. So it needs to have a slightly domestic quality to it. So I'm not really in favor of massive monumental skyscrapers. Those are necessary in certain areas, but for the most part, they tend to be ego projects where you say, look at this tower, oh, look at this, aren't we proud that Colombo has it? That's not what people come for. People enjoy a city because they can walk, they can meet their friends, chat, go somewhere together, have a meal, come back home, and you don't necessarily have to drive 2 hours from Beruala up to Colombo to do it, or Nigambo down to Colombo. So that's kind of my slightly controversial view. I do apologize beforehand if it is controversial.
Deepali Modi, I got to introduce her because so many may not know her. She's a chartered architect. She has worked in Sri Lanka, India, and the USA. From architecture to teaching and practicing. And her recent interest has moved to a larger area of city planning. She will speak to you about urban design and that is her passion.
Yes, so I agree with both Murad and Ashok here, because you see, urban design is really not meant to be the domain of a bunch of professionals. It's much bigger than all of these professions, and it actually really impacts on the daily life of people. And so it's important that people also engage with with city authorities, with government, with in sort of driving the kind of changes they want to see happening in their city, because it impacts their daily commute. You need good transport for that. It impacts where they buy their produce. You need properly planned commercial areas around where they work, where they live. Where do you send your children to school? Do you have to put them in a van and make them drive an hour to a high-end school in Colombo when you live in the suburbs? I mean, that is where planning comes in. Why are these schools not where they need to be? Why are the healthcare facilities not where they need to be? Do you have public spaces where you can relax in the evenings, which is near your house? Do you have the densities where such services can be provided efficiently? And for all of this, people actually do need to engage, because it's not an esoteric subject. It is not for a bunch of wealthy people to have a pretty place. It's really the more it's actually the poorer community is, the better they need their urban spaces to be, because they depend so highly on those spaces. So we need affordable housing, we need good parks, and that's really the thrust of what urban design should be about. And
that is a lot of food for thought. You're quite right, because the I wouldn't say the poor people, down the line they live in congested areas and they don't have any sort of greenery or some sand for them to trample. So I think that is very necessary, that they should have a little bit of space around where they live. Dr. Jagat Munasinghe is a town planner from the University of Moratuwa. You can elaborate on the town planning.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, I do agree and do not agree with some of the views, of course, that has been expressed so far. Not that I kind of try to put into a debate, but let me add some, because I'm an academic, let me add some kind of theory into what we have been talking, and also a little bit of history about all these things that we talk about. True enough that we can talk about good things and bad things, and about Colombo and the other cities in Sri Lanka, and kind of as the total landscape of Sri Lanka as a whole. But remember that all these things that we talk about, the things that we like and the things that we don't like, and things that we agree and things that we don't agree, maybe things that are personal to us. Even being within the same family, same culture, we like certain things, while our siblings, our parents may not like the same thing that we like. But whatever it is, we are social beings. So we are not escaped, or we are not kind of isolated from the social system that we are living in. That is as a background. Why I said that was that all things that we see as good things today and also bad things today, and what is there in Colombo today, is part of a whole kind of process that has happened in history. So we cannot forget that Colombo was a city that was built during the British period, but there was Colombo kind of port, maybe kind of in a smaller scale before that. But there were so many cities in Sri Lanka, in a different form. Throughout the world, we have cities before 18th century, 19th century. Nowhere that you find a city or so-called kind of centers of power that is developed by people themselves, except by some authoritarian kind of involvement. So that is how it had happened, whether we like it or not. That is the history, right? We can see, when we look into the history, we can see that is always some authority that has planned, designed and developed the city. Maybe people also have some agency, of course they involve in it. They do certain modifications, they do certain adaptations, they do kind of alterations in the city. That is how it is going, right? So this conflict between this the authority and the agency, the people, of course that is always there, right? So that has been continuing, but after this industrial revolution, we all understand this new town planning came into being as a response to the environment that got created out of this industrial revolution. So, we being a country that was kind of under British, being a British colony at that time, we also got the legacy of town planning from that time. So, Colombo is a result of that. So, we cannot forget that Colombo is not necessarily a city that was built purely by people. So, it also had seen this authoritarian kind of involvement in planning the city. So, the Murad said about the town planners, this particular word town plan also was introduced to Sri Lanka and also to the entire world as a result of this town planning system that came into being, that kind of I would call it some kind of pedagogy and some kind of I would say institution that has been kind of created at that time. So, as a result of that, we also have this the kind of system of planning came into Sri Lanka, which is a modern thing, I would say, not in the modern to today's context, but modern in the context throughout the history that we have been doing, right. So, now this that is the history of it, but at the same time we have to understand the Colombo more or less is a mini model of maybe Mumbai, right. Mumbai is 10 times bigger in Colombo, which is again a British kind of an establishment, and maybe that got a lot of influence from British town planning at that time. So, most of the things that was introduced here we got as a result of we being a colony, right. But today we are struggling, it seems that we are struggling to kind of make a balance between this the British kind of gift that was given to us and how to maintain it in a certain way with whatever local situations. That is a kind of a struggle that we have. We all understand we have from one side we have this climate and the culture and the people's behaviors, and we have some kind of inherent behavior within us. So, we are trying to match our behavior into this kind of British gift that is given to us, and we try to control it, we try to control in a way that to maintain a certain character, so that we will not lose what was gifted to us from the very beginning. But whatever it is, we cannot again forget, we are part of this global system, there is this whole world economy. If we believe in this so called economic growth and all that, of course we have to run behind numbers. I do not know why, whether it is right or wrong, but whatever is, everybody is talking about GDP, high economic growth and everything. We can have debate about it, but still it seems that everybody is running behind it. But if you want to achieve that kind of an economic development, of course this kind of urban development is a good part of it. I mean, it is an essential part of it. So, this high rises that is coming up, the type of development that we get and the businesses that is coming into Colombo, the type of environment that they are demanding for is a result of that. So, we can see this struggle between what we try to maintain and what we try to kind of achieve, that is always there. So, it is a matter of ideologies and it is a matter of day to day life. So, I would end up kind of the first kind of session in that way, but we can talk in detail about it, right.
So, you're talking about the practicality, is it?
There are practicality and there are ideologies as well.
I think what he's trying to say is there are many forces that drive the development of a city, and in the colonial era it was the colonial governments that set up a very similar planning. Both, if you look at Bombay and Sri Lanka, I mean there are identical institutions. It's like if you go to Singapore, any Britisher traveling would hit the same kinds of institutions in all of these colonial cities. But now the drivers of change have completely like for a long period, in the 30 years up till 2010, I think the drivers of change was personal and private investment. And sometimes that driver was uncontrolled. So you have people going out into the marshes of Battaramulla and building houses. Even before the roads have been put in or the sewer lines have been put in, people are building. And then as an afterthought, someone puts a road in and someone puts a a system in. And that is not the way.
On that note, we have to stop for a while for a short commercial break. Stay tuned, please. Welcome back to TalkWalk. Just now you saw on screen some of the awesome work of Murad. I'm sure he will talk about some of those projects which are his favorites and which are in the pipeline as well.
Minoli, I'd rather speak. Yes, rather speak on the urban development part of it.
He's very shy.
I enjoy everything I do. On this topic, I completely agree with Dr. Jagat Munusinghe. It's a heritage that we are trying to protect. Having said that, that's the macro picture. We have a heritage, and we've done quite a bit to save that and probably live like that, which we are changing now. But the micro part for me is more important. For example, again, just going slightly off urban development, we had destruction of a lot of fisher houses during the tsunami, and then the authorities built houses for them, which was far better than what they lived in, but they never lived in them because they just left them, and they didn't know why, because there is no development without social development. Firstly, they couldn't afford to live in those houses. Secondly, there is a certain structure of how these shanties or these housing communities of fisher folk develop. Now, how they develop is, this is actually directly related to urban design as well in a different way. How they develop is, the fronts of houses face a road. Right. The rear of the house faces the rear of a house of another road, and the occupants who are in the house the whole day have a little discussion, because they keep their mind going from the rears of the house, and if the man is the one who comes after work, he'll sit in the front and have a discussion over the opposite side. So, basically it's mind occupation. You and I would go to a bar, you and I go to a nightclub, you and I go to a friend's place, but in this society you had this mind thing. Same thing happened in Gamuda, where they had this village and they shifted it to 1 acre plots, and then the whole day you're lost. And imagine a lost mind, what can happen to it? You're a psychologist.
Absolutely.
And this is completely ignored. And every time we spoke about this, it's like, no, we are getting a donor, so we are building the house. The micro part is more important than the macro.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The macro is what these people are actually concentrating on. The micro is the one that affects the social development of a being. Yes, if you take living in apartments, which we are not yet 100% used to, we are used to living in a house which has everything, garden to pets to whatever. When you have a city like, say, Manhattan, where you have high rises, you have the parks and so on, which you probably feel you own. So, the macro is what we have, and how we will develop in a sort of a very light scale. But the micro is, for me, the most important part that we seem to ignore.
I totally agree, because these are the causes that people go through depressions, because adaptability to a new style of life.
I think it's very dangerous when you work this thing top down. As you say quite rightly, it has to be bottom up. I mean, we tend to forget that cities are organic, living, breathing things. They grow in one direction, they die somewhere else. So it's really dangerous for us to play Napoleon or Hitler or Mussolini and say, this is how I want the road, this is how I want the house. I mean, the perfect example is what I was telling earlier. Sadly, very sadly, we inherited a British system, which in itself, because it was early 20th century, was wrong. To get a more successful city, you have to go back another 100 years before, when all the houses were next to each other, they all had verandas, what we call istopwas, and people could chat to each other across there from one veranda to another and be close to the road. Whereas what we have inherited are houses that are set well back from the road, lots of trees covering. So you might as well be in a suburb, you might as well be in the country, you're not in a city. And I think our planners tend to mistake urban planning for suburban planning. So we have this endless suburb going all the way from Negombo right down to Beruala, which is so wrong for a city. I feel cities need to be concentrated and kept together and very well defined, like your Italian cities that have walls around them. And outside of that is the countryside. But anyway, there again, it's my controversy.
Yes, and actually, the older parts of Colombo, if you go to the northern part, there is
Kotahena is
Peta
like that,
and,
yeah.
and Dematogod, and all these sides, you will see that urban form where everything is cheek by jowl, basically townhouses, or you can disagree with the superficial aesthetics of those buildings, but in reality, the format is what comes from any of the older, European towns where everything is, they share walls, they are what you call a townhouse, high density on the street, and that is what in a way makes them affordable. For instance, if you look at there are a lot of new schemes by the government to rehouse, much needed rehousing for the urban poor or the underserved settlements, and in order to get those densities, they have resorted to 8 or 9 or sometimes even 20-story towers, which is a lifestyle that people have to get used to. I mean, they'll get used to it, and there is a certain community that is built when you live like that. But if you look at old Colombo, they're already living at those densities in very small spaces, shop houses, and there is no reason why we cannot go back to that way of building and still achieve the kind of densities that they are trying to do with schemes like Mihindusenpura and Sahasrapura, which are absolutely required in this city at this point.
Also, sorry, Jagan, please. No, I just wanted to say that we're very lucky here in Colombo that we can learn from the mistakes of other towns.
Right.
Now, we have these fabulous tower blocks with acres of space in between, then the wind just goes straight through. And you have the same council blocks in London where crime is rife. And a young mother pushing her pram can't bring her child back at night because she will get mugged and robbed and beaten up. So your idea seems to me so much more sensible than having essentially the Corbusier idea of these machines to live in, or what, which have been completely discredited now, half a century later. So we can learn from other people's mistakes. Whether we do is another matter.
I want to say something before Doctor speaks, because I am very much in agreement with Dr. Munusinghe. But I want to put a spoke in the wheel to all of you guys.
Good. Spokes are good.
See, what we also keep forgetting, and we can criticize Colombo, we can criticize, it is the commercial capital. And you have 1 million point something people living there with a floating population of more than 2 million. And it is going to be the commercial capital, and it is not going to accommodate more and more people in development, right? So we have to understand that. We have to let go Colombo. If you take London, if you take where the hub is, not the whole part, the hub is congested. But I'm not saying, let it go under control. This is inevitable.
Is it inevitable?
It is inevitable.
Isn't it better to stop Colombo and develop those other cities around?
True,
so
but
that they come up.
The commercial capital, due to the vicinity of the port, the airport, and so on, it's going to ring develop. I'm not saying it's going to stay in fort, but it is where your central business district in terms of any country starts developing, and why I am glad, and we all should be glad, is still concentrating there.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, it's not like it's all over the place, and
Yes.
you have to thank the authorities.
Yes.
I mean, When you go to, I mean, every time we have to design a hotel, we curse the authorities for the reservation, right? But because of that, you know, we have saved a wonderful coastline,
Yep.
right? Yes, there was 500 meter, and if you really look at it, if it's not a blanket rule, the authorities have actually done a survey and changed reservations from certain parts. We don't make use of it, but we can, and these things have actually kept. So basically, a long time ago, I think it was the 90s, where the FAR was taken over a certain plot of land in Colombo, which I think was good, because there is a value and you are trying to concentrate, so your travel time is less. So the whole megapolis, which is a wrong word, but the megapolis project was live, work and play in the same area, so that you're transporting, which you're talking about. But the idea is, we need, I'm speaking before doctor, because I'm sure doctor has a lot to say about it, and I am sure he'll agree with me. We cannot forget that we are developing, as we said, economic sense. Nobody is going to take that kind of money and of say Altair or whatever, something fancy, which is yes or no, I'm not saying, in a part which is like in Bathramula. He'll do a normal apartment.
Yeah.
So there is this commercial world, global, like doctor said, and we have to accept this is not a new plan. In 1981, under the government of J.R. Jayawardena, the governing area, which is more to do with government officers, the forces were all sent to Jayawardenapura Parliament area, which is now slowly, throughout every government, it has been shifting. This is commercial hub, right? And nobody is going to build, example, a Shangri-La in Bathramula, right? Because they are coming to work, people coming for business has to be around the area. You don't go to Singapore to work at Shenton Way, which is the CBD, and live in Serangoon Road. So we need to, while we control the greenery and all that, we need to accept that this is the commercial capital. You can pass laws like Thailand is, like if you build a footprint of 1 acre or half an acre of a building, replace the whole building with green, and cover that 1 acre for direct green. There are 3 types, which is energy green, building material green and chlorophyll green. So you could do those things to make the city, right? But we cannot ignore whatever we do, protest, whatever we do, and blame people. This is our city.
Yeah.
And the future, we'll have old city, new city and very new city, which is the 4th city.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you on the concentration. I just do not agree with this expansion forever and ever.
That's what I'm saying, micro.
Yeah.
That is a different story.
Yeah.
Now, doctor, I think
Yes, it's your.
you will
always call me Jagat. It's okay. I mean, right. Okay. Right. To talk about no. Let me talk about 3 things related to what we have been talking now. Now, the first thing is, we cannot forget that society and the city both are evolving phenomena, right? Not that we are static. I'm sure that I don't know how old are you, but it's not good for me to ask that. But I know, but I understand that your next generation and their next generation, right? We all are very different. I experienced that because my parents, what they valued, I don't value, and I know my son, he doesn't value what I mean, what I value, right? We all have different ideologies. We all have different relationships with all around the globe, and therefore we value certain things that our parents did not value. So this living in Colombo or living in somewhere else, also the same, because maybe we value living, just as you said, in communities, in verandas, talking to each other, and living in very small plots, as Deepali said. Now they seen maybe 3 perch, 2 perch block next to each other. Maybe the first generation valued it. They had relationships like that. They had kind of community formed in that, on that basis. But their children, with this affluence, I mean, they get some kind of social affluence, and also their economic potential and everything. They go to different schools where they meet up certain other type of people, and they value different lifestyles, and they, I don't think, would like to live in the same place that their parents lived in. And that is what's happening in the countryside as well, right? I mean, we all know that people migrate into cities, maybe at least to suburbans, because they don't want to live like what their parents are. Their Mahagadar is there, their parental house is there, they go there for this Avrudha and maybe once a week or sometimes less than once a week sometimes, just to see their parents and just to enjoy the countryside and come back to Colombo, because their life is very different to what their parents had. And also it's a matter of romancing that about what's there in the village, right?
But isn't that because we have failed in some way to inspire our children to value the Mahagadara?
Let's talk about it later. I mean, maybe what you say is right. Maybe because it's a failure, it may be the kind of a process. Who knows, right? Okay, we can talk about it. But whatever it is, it seems that we are not static. Any society is not static. That's evolving, right? We all are evolving. Next generation is kind of changing their mindsets and going into different kind of way of life. So the city also has to evolve accordingly. That's how it happens, right? So everything in a city, we can see what had happened in the British period and what happened in this post-independence period, what had happened in the 80s and what has happened now are all is a kind of one process that is responding to the needs of the people, those who are living in that. So although we love to be living in those kind of environments, maybe our children may not like it. That's why we have a big demand for these apartments, condominiums. Who are living? I mean, who are these people living? They are also people. Those who had this maybe sometimes migrated to outside and come back to Colombo, and maybe coming from outside Colombo, and those who want to have a new way of life because they are much exposed to the kind of things that's happening in the world, right? That's one thing. In summary, we have to make sure, we have to understand that society is evolving, so the changes, they change their kind of attitudes and the aspirations. Therefore, the city also has to kind of cater to that. Number two, sorry, you were number two is that there's a thing called paradigm shift, right? I mean, in planning and in any discipline, I know there sometimes people call it a paradigm shift. That means the way of thinking, way of seeing the world, right? So in town planning also, or the urban design is the same. There was a time that people thought, okay, having nice green areas, having kind of extended gardens, and that's why the Colombo was very much loved by Patrick Geddes, because people were living in kind of big garden estates and things like that. He wanted Colombo to become the garden city of Asia, not with the greens that you talk about, 3 types of green. But his green was mainly about this garden, that is about this extensive.
A suburban plan as opposed to an urban plan.
That's what he is, right? So there was no much understanding about this petroleum and the kind of where the energy waste and the kind of emissions that is coming from with the automobile and everything. You had extensive kind of garden spaces, and you were driving, as you said, kind of to get your kind of loaf of bread, maybe miles and miles in your automobile. That is how it was happening, right? But that has changed now with the understanding. I mean, any paradigm shifts with the understanding of the scarcity and the kind of changing need. So we know that we are running into an era where everybody has to kind of be a kind of concerned with this in saving, energy saving, and this saving green, saving space, saving money and everything. So that's why this compactness again is valued. But how do you achieve this compactness? Is it the same old way with this kind of 3-perch, 2-perch blocks? Is it in the vertical manner? However much we say we love this kind of garden type of thing, but there are a lot of people, those who love these apartments, right?
I live in one.
Is it not possible? Is it not possible that we can make a mistake, and because building takes it's a very slowly evolving game, you only realize a generation later that you have made that mistake?
Yeah, that's the third thing that I want to talk about.
Okay,
that's what,
sorry.
Okay? Sorry, yeah, exactly. This is not only about the people, not about general public, but we all understand the experts also do the same thing. We look at some other thing that's happening in the other countries, some technology that is evolving somewhere, absolutely. That is the paradigm or the kind of thinking or the ideologies in some other countries. We think, that's the best way to do it, right? So we simply adapt it, right? So as I said, any city, any town from the historic times had a authoritarian kind of an arm in planning, right? Some authorities work dictating terms to a large extent. However much it's a people city, I don't think there are any people cities except for these authoritarian cities, right? Everything is planned by somebody. So these authorities, they may be higher or they have their own kind of political ideology. So it should be like that. It should be like London. It should be like Singapore. It should be like something else. So we plan it that way. We try to get that installed here. That is what we are trying to do. But when we do that, we have a lot of kind of difficulties. Of course, we know that because of the climate, because of the people, because of the culture that we have, we can't fully achieve that. So, we are in a bit of a mess. But the wrong thing that we do is, by the time we try to realize what is there in Singapore, Singapore has already given it up.
Right. Quite right, quite right. They've moved on.
So, this is the mistake that we do. I know that a lot of things that we tried in Colombo seems that we tried at a time that those people are giving it up, right. So, that is something that we do as experts. I don't know, including myself, I would say we all kind of belong to that particular technocrats category. We all do this mistake. We try to adapt things maybe because of the political pressure, or maybe sometimes we believe in certain things blindly. For some reason, it seems that we don't experiment on our own. We try to adapt things from outside, sometimes which are not good for us, which are not really good for us, which they people also have abandoned because they don't kind of fit for them, right. So, we have quite a number of examples that I can quote because we have tried it.
We got Singaporeans to do our forest city.
Not only forest city, even megapolis thing, for example,
Yeah.
right. It's
It's
a
a
typical
joke.
typical Singaporean thing.
What worries me is seeing so many high rises, say on a 10-foot road. Now, is that proper planning?
No.
Minoli, that's wrong. The laws are very clear in the UDA. We cannot do that.
I have seen.
That's bribery and corruption.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something.
yes.
But under the laws and the thing, it's very clear. The width of the road, the size of
access
the
road,
plot.
the
There is
size
a
of your
lot
plot,
of reasons,
all of this.
and of course the zoning. If you see something like that, that is a illegal thing. But generally, our laws are very, very clear.
And also sometimes we find people complain because they were a bit nostalgic and romancing. You know that I know that when I was in the UD, I got so many complaints from people from in the kind of all the quarters of the residential areas in Colombo and its suburbs, saying, you know that when we were children, we enjoyed the birds, we enjoyed sunlight, we enjoyed
We
wind
all
and
get it,
everything.
we all get it.
Okay, that's fine. So what's wrong with it? I mean, now we don't get it because of the building that is coming up in my next door, in my the neighborhood. But okay, if you really want to kind of enjoy that, of course, you have space away from Colombo, as Murad said, now that it's extending to somewhere. Okay, why don't you kind of shift into that place, because there's this economy, there's this technology, there's this demand that is coming up. We have to give it up. Any city has to evolve, right? So city
And the law is very clear. If you build something, you get your light within
your premises, yes.
So it's not like you know you can complain the neighbor is building something. Hey, he has a larger plot of land, and he's saying, as Jagat said, there is a demand, and that's where the money and the economy rolls, right? So, you know, if you go and try to stop it, then you have other repercussions hitting. So again, I want to emphasize the fact that due to whether it's adhered or not, as Minoli pointed out, is a different thing, but due to the rules and regulations, we are clustering.
And that is a very
That
good
is a
thing.
very, I mean, good thing. Jagat mentioned Mumbai. Mumbai didn't cluster. It just went wild, right? But, for example, Chennai, right? But now they are clustering. And it's like this. Say I have a business, say IT company, not the production, but the sales, and I'm in the city, and my buyers come to Colombo. You know, you want to be in a place that they can commute and quickly in 1 or 2 days. That's why Singapore became a hub. I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm absolutely against this trying to be Singapore, which I think should be no. But the workings of it, you know. So Colombo, if you look at the plan which was made in 1981, subsequently developed by the authority, it's very, very clear. Like the port access to B from Battala. And that road is already built. For whatever reason, it's not used yet, but I think with the outer circle and all that, it will be there. So you have the port close to Colombo, but Colombo doesn't need direct. So basically, the laws have really kept us intact.
In shape.
The ring development again, because we are a third world and we are developed like a hub, we can't afford to have 2-3 hubs at the moment. You have an influx of jobs being created in the city, right? London, for example, right? They have hubs. They have a hub, a bit of a university-oriented hub in Manchester. Then there's a hub in Birmingham, but London, there is a hub, and you live there. So the universities come in, schools come in. So it's a whole commercial hub, and whatever we do, it's not going to be possible.
No, I think we're all in agreement there that we need that concentration.
We need concentration.
And also it is organic, so it's going to change whether we try to
Of
control
course.
it or not. It'll change naturally inside.
We have not yet started blowing up buildings, but if you look at developed cities,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it's not working, they just blow
They
it
just
up
blow it
and
up.
they do
Start
what.
again.
This
But-
is where I do disagree a little with both of you when you say that things haven't gotten bad yet and that we are still in good shape. I actually don't agree, because I think we went out of shape when we allowed this sort of strip development along roads,
absolutely.
and we allowed sort of unplanned development into the suburbs, and where the planning was an afterthought after the investments had
It's-
already happened.
It's the geographic expansion. I
Yes,
object
and
to.
so for me that is a failure of planning actually.
There are two types. I mean, again, I'm not a planning expert, but there are two types, right? Due to the congestion of the city and the price of land directly, the residences start moving out. It's a standard thing. It happened in Anuradhapura period. Right? Started moving out, either ring or whatever. You may be right by not letting reservations of the time, say you're right up the road, now we can't buy it in the road. That may be the case.
No, not even that. It's just like from here to Bentota, it's
Berula,
one
it's
long,
one long
town.
strip
You know,
development.
there is
but-
no
but-
planning.
So right. So now, to me,
Yeah.
I think you're the expert, right?
Yeah.
But it's good that I say it and you can correct it. It's the distance to the number of people again,
Yeah.
right? And this city will evolve and it will grow. Hopefully not, but if we are going to thrive in economic sense as world order, it's going to grow.
Surely the answer is to think of some cunning way of bringing down the price of land and
Yes.
the price of housing.
Yeah,
in
let
the
me
city.
Demand and supply.
illuminate a little bit.
Yeah, but we have to be slightly cunning and engineer it.
Yes.
Yeah, let me kind of illuminate again a little bit of kind of planning in Sri Lanka that you all might have heard about this. There's a thing called National Physical Plan,
Yes.
right? Not that we don't have plans,
Yeah.
right? So we have plan at the national level, which kind of guides or which provides a kind of a guideline as to which areas can be developed, which areas to be developed, which areas has to be preserved for future generations for sustainable development or whatever we call it, and also which areas needs this transportation links and which area needs kind of optimization. All that is being very well worked out. Plan is there, right? And also for Colombo and its suburbs also there are plans. There are
That's
plans.
brilliant.
Huh?
That's good to know.
There are
no?
there are.
No, no.
There are,
Yeah.
there are plans.
Stringent, yes.
Yeah.
But remember,
It's a
in
question
any
of the
country,
transport now.
Oh.
yeah, in
That's
any
what you
country,
have
in
to
any
talk to.
country, the first thing I want to say is in any country, including so even in Singapore, as we know, I was there in Singapore for some time. Therefore, I know how it worked there. Unless these systems are very kind of even the politics is very much kind of attached to the systems, meaning that they are one integrated whole. The plans anywhere do not work without political will,
Yeah.
right? That we got to understand very well. There has to be kind of a support from the political authorities and the political will to kind of implement the plans. So that Professor Amal Kumari, who is supposed to be here, always say this: what is being planned are not implemented, and what is being implemented are not planned, right? So that is how it happens usually. So that is how it happens. That's number one. Also at the same time, we cannot forget the fact that that people, those who want to have a certain lifestyle, and they go and kind of live in wherever they think that they fit into kind of that kind of a lifestyle, they can kind of find that lifestyle. So that is quite inevitable. Of course, if they can't live in Colombo, they might find it outside. If they want to live in Colombo for other reasons like migration and everything, they might so commuting and everything, they might live in Colombo even with difficult conditions. As we said, the underserved settlements that we talk about, those are the kind of results of people, those who cannot afford to pay for those kind of a good or affluent or the kind of luxury lifestyle, but those who manage with whatever they have, right, with the bare minimums that they can afford.
And who also need to be in the center of
They have to
town
be in the
because
city.
their work
Yeah,
is
that's
They
it.
have to
dependent.
be.
They have to be.
They have to be.
They have
And
to
also
be.
don't forget this linear development that you talk about, the urban development that we are worried about. True enough that we all complain, that's bad. But at the same time, that has good side as well,
Yeah.
right? If you go to see a town like Kegal or Mavanal or somewhere, right, you can see it starts from somewhere, it goes to about 1 to 2 kilometers all along the road, right? So, good thing about is you have all the main transportation lines, infrastructure, the people's users and community spaces, everything along the main road. But if you go to a backside of a boutique or a house, what you see? Well, you see the mountains, you see paddy fields, you feel the kind of the environment is very much protected, right? But had you kind of given an opportunity for them to open up all these lands, what would happen? Right? All these things will be gone, right?
Please
So they-
bear with us. We've got to go for another commercial break. Stay tuned, please. Welcome back to TALKWALK. So the good news is that we are not a failed city when you compare to the rest of the world. But I am concerned why small cities like Vellavata, Dehiwala, Galkissa, why can't it be developed like with the schools so that parents don't have to come all the way to Colombo to get their children? Now, can you all elaborate on that? Why we cannot have the school system there going?
I believe that it's not only a matter of urban planning, but we also understand that there's this social kind of system that we have. We have certain schools which we call popular schools located in certain places, and there was a plan to have branches out of them established in different parts of the kind of in the suburbs of Colombo, so that nobody has to not that everyone has to come to the city center. But that also failed because the kind of mentality that the people have, everybody wants to send their child to the central school that is in the Colombo center. I don't have to mention the name, but all these big school. And if the people don't have that kind of demand, why do you find that all kind of school buses coming from Panadura to Colombo and Kalutura to Colombo, sometimes Gampa to Colombo? Because this is not a matter of kind of planning alone. It's a matter of our attitude, our kind of way of thinking, way of life. Had we developed some kind of infrastructure and have good teachers in the kind of schools in the suburbs, I still don't think we can develop this the kind of the branding. So as long as we have that kind of understanding, that kind of attitude, send our child to this particular school with that particular name that has a history, that people will still look for that kind of entry into that particular school, and the traffic and the other kind of thing that is happening in the city now will last long. But certainly we can do it. I believe that we can have a solution to that. Maybe that we get rid of this popular school concept at the primary level. Right? We get rid of these primaries in all these popular schools. Maybe that a lot of people will kind of now call me and kind of
no, but I agree with you.
I agree, yes.
There is absolutely no reason why we can't use the carrot and the stick. The carrot
Right.
being put fabulous teachers into these suburban schools, fabulous
absolutely.
teachers, lots of throw money
at least at the primary level,
labs,
at least at the
etc.
primary level, because these
Yeah.
primary ones are the kind of always
Yeah.
kind of brought into the city in cars and traffic and all these kind of things are happening.
What is
But
sad
you
is-
also need the stick. That is, you enforce the residential rule that within a mile, or I don't know what the that
That's the-
But they
no,
cheat.
but
That's
you
there,
but
that's
it's
there,
not
but yes.
enforced. It's not enforced.
It can be enforced. It's just that people are preferring not to enforce
No,
it
no,
by
it's on a blind
allowing
eye.
yeah,
Remember,
it's
it's
on a
not-
blind
it's
eye.
not on-
Sadly,
enforce it.
before the child starts primary school, the child is
They're
taught
lied.
how to cheat.
Yes.
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 And
The
also,
parents.
and remember, that's not only the 1 mile radius thing, but also there's this all boys association, all girls association. They have a quota, and this forces people. forgive me, right?
No,
Okay,
no, but
now
it's the
these
truth.
some
That's the truth.
government servants and the doctors and the forces, and they are given a quarter, right?
Privileged.
Like
Yeah.
some privileged people, of course. With all that, can we go ahead like this? I mean, this is something that we have to get rid of, right? I mean, this is something that
Absolutely.
can,
No, and
systems have to
also
change.
the fallout from that is that these so-called central schools are so huge. They're like universities in other countries,
Yes.
and
Yes,
the quality
it's
of
very bad.
teaching is really poor as a result.
Absolutely.
How can you teach a class of 55
How can you
children or-
teach? What is the time allocation
Yeah.
from the teacher to the student?
Yeah, yeah.
And also, we cannot forget that when the people kind of move upward, kind of in terms of the economics and in terms of their social kind of quality of life, they demand for good kind of education environment. If not the good teachers, at least some kind of good education environment, right, with all kind of infrastructure facilities. So those type of things have to be provided in all schools,
In the other schools,
in the other schools as well. At least kind of in the kind of centers, town centers, so that people will be attracted to that. At least at the primary level. Maybe when it comes to secondary level, they can use public transport. Of course, this congestion will be less, right? That is something that we can do if we really want to do it.
Talking about the transport system, shouldn't we refer to that? Because think about 90% of the population, they have to depend on the public transport. How do we improve it and bring it into appropriate standard? Even we then the government can make a law that none of us can use our vehicles, that we can use the public transport on one day.
Yeah, the one
is that fair?
The one universal thing that I can say is that you look at any failed city and it's one that's overtaken by cars. So the car is the enemy of a good city,
Quite
which means
right.
public transport.
Quite right.
Right, sure, of course,
Because
yeah.
they have the plans.
Sure, of course. Now this public transportation, people using public transport depends on few things. First thing is that it has to be reliable. So
Which is not.
No.
which was
the
there
bus
some
is
time
quite
back,
quick.
maybe.
It's quick.
The
Maybe-
accidents for the day,
Yes,
No,
that's
not about
true.
this. I'm talking about the reliability in the sense, I mean, you should be able to plan your trip. I start at this point at a particular time, and I should,
Oh.
just as you said, that you're
Yes,
coming at
yeah.
8:15 and end up here 9:15 or something like that. Okay, so that we should be able to plan it in such a way. Can we rely upon our public transportation today? But we had a system like that some time back before 1970s, 80s.
Really?
Right? Even, why not? The CTB, CTB, Langama we call it, right?
Yeah.
Even though it was, Ladaram bus and all that, we call it, that very substandard type of things. It was very reliable.
very
We
reliable.
could plan it. We could plan it at a particular time. If you want to be in a certain place, you could do it. And also look at in Colombo, still the routes are working. To go to from any place from the suburbs of Colombo to any place in Colombo, you have to have only one transit.
Yeah.
The routes are worked
One
out in that way. It's very efficient.
I think it's a good system.
No, no,
It's a very good system.
It's just the
But the only
distract of
thing
the
is,
Yes,
now
yes.
it is not reliable because of this undue competition between this the public buses and the private buses, and they have a competition. They don't have transportation. They don't have kind of time tabling and things like that. That has to be regulated. That is number one,
there
reliability.
is a complaint that some routes don't work after 7:30.
That's what.
Is that then it
That's
should
what
then?
I said.
And that
What we
kills the
had
city,
earlier, what we
yes.
had earlier before 1980s was that it has three big good qualities. One thing is reliable. We know the bus is coming at a particular time. It ends up at the destination at a particular time. We know that. Second thing is we know the bus is that however much is crowded, and you can get into the bus and you at least you running the footboard or whatever, right? Third thing, your last bus and the first bus will be there. First bus at the 4:30 a.m. and the last bus at 10:30 at night. Those were there. If they are in between, if you don't have anything, and also if the bus breaks, there will be another bus coming in. We know that, right? So that is the reliability that we are looking for.
So why was it stopped?
It is because of this
Commercialism.
mismanagement. Commercial. Because it was very much subsidized, right? Now it's not subsidized because now there's a competition with the private. No private bus owners will run without a profit, right? That's number. Number two is the comfort. When the people are socially affluent. For example, would you like to kind of go in a bus now? Right, okay.
Not
But
with this temperature, for
yes,
sure.
not in temperature.
But the
And
funny
also-
thing is we go abroad and we use
Where
the
you go,
bus.
just
No,
but
those-
those-
but-
those-
We don't use
because
it here.
Buses
Yes.
are comfortable, right?
Comfortable.
So we
and
have to
good.
provide
Because they
public
only
buses.
allow 6 standing passengers.
Yes.
They don't take one more.
And also at the same time, buses are conditioned.
Yes.
And you can decently kind of get into the bus
And
without
arrive,
waiting and you can
arrive,
get- yes.
yeah.
Arrive at work.
Arrive
You
at
won't
work
be
and-
disheveled by the time
So-
you
so
get there.
Now
essentially
in
it's
London, when there is a train strike, right, they use the boats. boat travel. We can easily use that
Yeah,
because
we
we
have
are so
started.
much of waterways.
We've started. Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
second thing that I said, that is the comfort.
Yes.
People
But
are
actually,
looking for comfort.
the
right?
government needs to throw money at transport.
Yes.
That's it, of
So
course.
that's the
to
other
make
thing.
the city
One
successful.
thing that the government has to understand is, okay, maybe you invest on this comfort and the reliability of the bus service, and also the third one can be the kind of safety, right? Also,
Yes, yes,
that's
sure.
it, right?
yes.
Okay, all that. When you invest on this money, right, you may not get a return out of that, but you get a return out of the other sectors.
Yes,
For
and
example,
the lost hours in traveling in by
traveling
car
and also
all that. Yeah.
efficiency that you find in the other sectors, like for example, commercial and the trading and maybe businesses and all that, right?
And the think tank, for example, the Kandy train has one air-conditioned carriage which you have to buy the ticket 6 months before.
Yes, yes.
So
At least
it's
2
just
weeks.
such a demand.
I go once a week, so I
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the other
So
thing,
why not
Vinod,
have a
is
few more? Yeah.
Something that this is not politics, but something that we have to very seriously think about is, I believe even Professor Kumarage and other transport experts also, you also will agree with me, why not we invest on this public transport instead of these billions spent on
Yes.
these expressways?
Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
It's true.
Absolutely.
In preference.
Very
Through
true.
this railway transportation, which
Yes.
is less expensive than
Yes.
these expressways, right?
It's true.
That should be the policy that we should be kind of looking at. But as I said, there are plans, there are politics, right? So when these two never match,
The
They
other
suffer.
thing to realize is that the transport network is basically the lifeblood of the city.
Absolutely.
And though transport networks, nowhere in the world are they run for profit, because what their job is to contribute to the economy
sectors.
that is
Quite
happening
right,
around
quite
them.
right,
Okay?
quite right.
So when the government tries to privatize these things and to get people to earn a living off of it, it's not going
It's
to
a
work.
failure.
It's
It's a failure. Mm.
That's why it's a failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting, the transport system, because think about not ourselves, we don't have to go by bus, but think of all the others.
No,
who've
but
got to
we
depend on
contribute
it.
to the traffic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, but
contributes to
if
many
We
the-
things,
shouldn't
of
have to,
no,
to
if the
come by
transport system
car.
is up to the mark,
We
we
wouldn't
can all use
hesitate.
it.
Exactly.
We can all
Exactly.
use
yeah,
it.
we are very fortunate to see that we have a very good route working out, right? That we have a very good route system. If we provided these bus services
Yes.
comfortable
Yeah.
and at the same reliable and at the same time without the undue competition, which is there now, right? Okay.
And to provide safe
Yes.
transit points
Yes.
between the buses
Yes.
and
That is
I
a
think the
policy.
entire parliament needs
Yes.
to only use public transport for just 1 week of its life, and then it'll all improve.
Yes.
No cars, just transport.
What
public
example they'll make to the rest of us?
transport. No,
They
because
do
if they used it, they would realize the hardships
Yeah,
the rest
sure,
of us face.
absolutely.
I mean, I went to school in Chicago, and if you look at the public transport system in Chicago, that is all we used. And we never felt that we were being shortchanged by it. The fares were very reasonable, everything interconnected. You could literally step off the train and go straight into the buildings, because that nexus between the public and the private, there was a system for it to be controlled. So you could come off your train, walk through the underground into your office building, up to your workplace, come off it, walk up to the elevated line into that. So these kinds of laws that allow it to happen, we need to put in place.
Oh, that is fine. I mean, as I said, okay.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. If not in like in Chicago, but at least some good buses
Absolutely. Yes.
cross the road.
No, Chicago. We
train,
want
We want
Chicago.
Chicago. You want
Some
Chicago.
shady,
You
some,
can't
some,
because you don't
some
have the
little,
temperature for that.
little investments on kind
Oh,
of
air
shade.
conditioning.
Some
No,
kind
we
of
have
handle.
the heat.
We can,
Oh, the
we
heat,
can,
sorry.
we can air condition with the solar.
No,
Solar
okay,
powered.
buses can be air conditioned, but the streets can be shaded with
Yeah,
trees.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's a tropical
that,
climate,
that
right?
was my
Yes.
point.
Yes.
A
Right?
perfect
Okay.
city needs to have arcades going
Yes,
around
yes,
it, and
yes.
piazzas and squares and
Yes.
trees. I mean, trees grow out of walls.
Let's use the
here, so-
bicycles. Let's pedal ourselves.
Right,
But
all
you
this-
But
know-
then you must ban cars, because cars
Yes.
will kill us otherwise.
So
You
there
know-
is a rule that there's a hierarchy of who comes first, and the hierarchy is supposed to work where the pedestrian is king,
Yes.
then the bicycle, then the three-wheeler, then the car, then the then the so for actually
the horse,
public transport.
Actually, the horse before the pedestrian.
Yes, the pedestrian, the bicycle, the bus, the three-wheeler, and so the further you go up into the privatization realm, the less importance they are supposed to have in city planning. But that is turned around
Entirely
on its head
in reverse.
here in
Yeah.
Sri Lanka. Yeah.
Entirely in reverse.
Not in Sri Lanka, I believe in India. the
Yeah.
same
In
more
India,
or less.
India
yes,
as
yes.
well.
In
India
the
is worse.
same,
Yeah, yeah.
much worse.
Much worse.
There's
But
a-
having said this whole thing, I think for me, we have a lot of hope.
Yes.
If you look at the school issue, a few years ago, maybe a decade ago, they started on the government hospitals, and if you do travel to the village hospitals, you will see it will beat any private hospital that you see.
They're excellent. Yeah.
So some of us are talking without seeing. So there is a lot of hope. Of course, politically they'll connect and they will go ahead. And again, walking in shade. Do you know that from Wallabat, Bambalapitiya to Golface, you can walk in shade?
No,
I was there. So you walk. You know, Bulloss Road via Independence Square, one area there's an issue in crossing the road near Nelumpokuna, Victoria Park, Navammawata to Golface and the shade. So please think, we have, due to the authorities and the rules, we have achieved a lot. There have been mistakes.
On that note, I think that's very good news that we still have laws and we are not a failed city. So I think we have to wrap up this series today. Up until next week, Wednesday, 6:30 on RTV TalkWalk. Thank you for watching. This is Minoli de Almeida signing off.